Okay, so this is the next video in the Ask the CEO series. Got a lot of really good questions, not as many as we did previously, so hopefully this will be a shorter video, but quite a few really good ones, and kind of demonstrates to me that everyone's really paying attention, is really very interested. So thank you for the engagement and thank you for the interest. I really appreciate this because this is going to help those shareholders who either did not think of asking the question or just didn't take the time to, or felt embarrassed to ask. So this is really good. This will give some, nice material for people to do some review or research on the company. So for those who participated, thank you very much. So the first one was something that came in through Facebook, and that was asking about the terms of acquisitions, the terms on the acquisitions we made. So when are we going to, when will we continue to pay and complete the payment of those acquisitions? So to be clear, the current subsidiaries are wholly owned. There are terms like any other purchase you'd make on a mortgage or a car or any other asset you'd purchase. We have terms. We can go over that after Q2 is reported because that kind of delves into Q2. So it's not that I don't want to answer the question. I think it's a great question and one that will help when we discuss how to review the financial disclosures and statements that we've gotten a lot of emails, and I've had some personal conversation on the phone with those who do not understand how to read or make sense of a financial statement or disclosure sheet. So I think this is going to be something that'll be helpful because it's an example of, so there's a capital expenditure of X, and it's going to be paid over what period of time, how much has been paid out, majority of it has been paid, but we're going to go into the terms on how that will get paid and maybe some of the specific terms for each acquisition. I think that could be really interesting. Not a lot of people get to participate in an M&A transaction, so this could be helpful. That's a real world experience, so we'll include that in our review of the Q2 financial statement. Now, I will say that in that review, we're not going to just do Q2 because I'd like to kind of give some context to how we got from point A to point Z. So we're going to review a couple of statements together as a group, and I think that'll be helpful for the rest of the shareholders, our fellow shareholders. So it's a great question. I hate to kind of kick the can down the road a little bit, but just give us a couple of weeks. Let's get out of Q2. Let's do the reporting on that. I think people are going to be very pleased with what they find in that. And then for those that are not 100% clear on how to interpret that data, we're going to go over it together. And we'll also include a little bit of this in the series that I'm going to start shooting here in the next week or so. I've got all the curriculum and outlines done for the securities series or the capital markets series to help kind of get people, caught up to speed on how things work in the capital markets for those who are, unclear. And then some, hopefully they'll benefit even though they have a pretty firm grip or understanding of the capital markets. Hopefully we'll include some things that, could shed some light not only on where we are now, but our strategy moving forward. So that was a great question. And thank you out there for posing it. It's something we definitely need to discuss in a couple weeks. Okay, so the next question came directly to me. It's odd that these come in groups. I got probably 3 or 4 emails asking the almost identical question of when are we going to start hiring? And out of the 3 or 4 emails, 2 or 3 of them were asking if we would pay for relocation. So I don't know if this is a discussion on a board or a group or what have you, but it's a great question. I've addressed it in some context previously, but to be clear, we've already started hiring. We've brought on quite a few people that we needed, in key positions while we're building. Obviously, many of you know that we brought Candace on as a social media director. She's done a fantastic job. I think many of you would agree. And we're going to be expanding or building out our team. There's a few other things that we've brought people in for. I don't know that it's prudent to get into all of those right now, but we have brought some strategic hires on for the purposes of building out some of the Intel infrastructure, as well as some of the military liaison assets that we have currently brought on board. So I'm not going to get too far into that, but we brought on quite a few people at the group and UAT level, but also across the full spectrum or full suite of subsidiaries. They're all bringing people on. Right now, it's just kind of a strategic placement or strategic hire. We are going to be making announcements and posting what positions are needed or available probably within the next 90 days. I've got to get through a few things. I want to get the audits done. Obviously, we're going to jump into the S1. So there's a few things, and there's actually a really good question here that I want to get to, and that'll kind of tie into the hiring thing. Next question, which was the second part of that question, was, will we pay for relocation? We have. We have brought people. We've relocated assets from various parts of the country and brought them here to Florida. It depends on the position and depends on timing, really, and capital, right? Obviously, that's an expenditure that we have to incur. Next question, are you going to let people tour the HQ when it's finally built? So, good question. I don't want to go too far into this, but the goal will be to have an area that we would be able to interact with the community, schools and students and so forth, that would be provided to those schools and or educational institutions for their students free of charge to come in and look at technologies and learn about science and so forth. So more of a visitor's center, if you will, with some of the offices being located there. The rest of the facility would be secured. We would not allow individuals to tour the remaining property. That is something we are looking at as far as acquisition. So yes, there is a plan to acquire land. Yes, there is a plan to design and build out headquarters temporarily, though. And let me just define temporarily. So for the next 5 years, the plan is to occupy 1 or 2 buildings that we would either acquire or lease while the headquarters is being built out. So I don't want to overstate this or have this being used as something as a sales pitch. We have not acquired land. We are looking at that. Currently, the market is not friendly for a buyer, let's say. So we are going to wait until things kind of calm down. And my expectation would be that towards the end of the year, we're going to see a different direction in that particular market. I don't want to get into particulars, but I think it's going to be advantageous for us to take a look at something towards the end of the year, beginning of next year, and we will. And we will have the capital, looks like we'll have the capital to execute on that. So yes, we will allow people to access or visit parts, but it'll be something that's contained and something that we manage very strictly. But no, I know in the past people have asked, and obviously years ago we had an incident when one individual that wanted to take a look at the Austin facility. No, that a lot of what we have here is sensitive in nature, and we are looking to pursue different contracts that would require discretion that I understand some of you may not understand, but that's the way it's going to be. So, but there will be an area where we can meet and hopefully do town halls and a whole bunch of other things that we would be able to interact with not only shareholders but the community at large. So hopefully that answers the question. But we're a long way from that. Okay, so let me just be very clear. Okay, so next question, obvious one. Are we going to be pink current this week? That's the expectation. I will be calling again tomorrow morning down to OTC just to make sure that we're still on track. If there's any questions and or concerns, comments, then I'll get those addressed immediately. As of right now, it looks like everything is progressing as they've indicated. So far, so good. So the expectation is, yes, this week we would become. Got a couple of emails, different suggestions. I get these a lot. Suggestions on what we can do with tech. Have you looked at this type of technology? I really love those questions, and I'm always hesitant to when I reply to those emails to say, well, we already, have something in the works. Yes, we're researching that because I don't want to discourage anyone where people just assume, oh, they already thought of that, because we don't. But I got a question that I want to share with you, because I addressed this in some capacity, but I just want to be a little clearer. So this one was, you should try no V at the airports. We were already, I told him, he's a shareholder that I speak with quite regularly via email and phone. Very nice gentleman. And I have to say, most of the people I speak with, if not all, are just great. We have a great group of shareholders, great feedback, unbelievable support. So I know I say this a lot, and at the risk of being, uh, boresome and redundant, I thank you. I really appreciate that. So this one was about try it at the airports. We're ready. We're way ahead of you. We've spoken with airports. We're going to be working with the FAA in some capacity, and then also taking a look at hospitals, train stations, rental car facilities. These are all things that we've already considered, but that, please don't take it as, they already thought of it all. So please, any suggestions you have, you never know. We might not have thought of it. We can't think of everything, right? So we're all shareholders. It's a group effort, and I genuinely appreciate that. But that was something that was asked, and I said, well, maybe I should share with everybody, because I think many people may have missed that. So airports, train stations, car rental, bus stations, anything that's going to include mass movement of people, as well as other public spaces that would require, any type of admittance, hospitals and so forth. Obviously, I think hospitals is an obvious one. We are speaking with some of the largest hospital networks in the country, and I also am taking a look at remote areas, not just the United States, but I mean, obviously Alaska is a part of the United States, and they have some very remote areas. But this would be, something that could be included in a couple of different processes or applications all across the country, but all across the world. So we're going to be taking a look at that. It's going to be something that I think will be widely used, or could be widely used, based on its ability to test for a variety of pathogens or airborne illness. So thank you for the question. He knows who he is. I talk to him all the time. Okay, Hygieia products. This is another one suggesting you should put them in sneakers. Well, we are looking at providing a product that can be used across a broad spectrum of products we don't own, right? So we are looking at, yes, because I got a question on this one, was a clothing line. When is that coming out? And the marketing behind it. So we are looking at a few things. I think I've said this before. Hygieia is highly scalable. It is something, when you're in my position, that you look at and say, this is a dream product, right? So it's everywhere. It should be everywhere, in my opinion. So I know I'm a little biased, but this is something that I am looking at, and not just myself, but the team is looking at putting as many places as possible. That includes, when you look at sneakers, maybe inserts. This includes door handles, light switches, keyboards, phone cases. This, of course, clothing across the board, bedding. These are all things that can help mitigate the transmission of certain diseases, bacteria, pathogens, etc. And I think it's going to be pretty important product and technology. So we're pushing it to be anywhere. We're also not just being linear in this. We are speaking to many companies about including our technology via a license into their product lines. And this is something that I think is going to be a huge area of growth for us as we build and we put in the support and infrastructure to really focus in on licensing, but also subsidizing certain technologies and companies. This is a way for us to get in the door, looking at more of a VC opportunity to help companies and startups develop a product that, with our technology, would make them not just unique, but also superior to any competitor that would come along. So these are all areas we've been taking a look at. It's been part of the plan from the beginning. I don't think I've shared this with you. Originally, we were not going to do any products. We were going to look at developing tech and then licensing to everyone else. Now we spoke with, and I don't want to mention any names, but we spoke to some very large, if not some of the largest companies in the world for athletic wear. Um, we had some pretty interesting conversations with some of those contacts. And the problem for me was that they need to maintain a certain efficacy and not just use it as a marketing tool. Yes, I believe the marketing is there and valuable with such a product, but it has to actually work and it has to work well. So that there will be a difference between the things we put out as far as product lines and maybe a competitor. So we didn't go that route because it just didn't seem to be in the product or brand's best interest. So we're going to be moving forward again with the clothing line. Many have seen some of the mock-ups as well as some of the prototypes in the female line for the female athletic line. We haven't released any photos of the children's bedding or children's clothing yet, but I know we're working on some of those new designs. That'll be something that we'll be pushing out in the future. So again, great question. This one had another part to it, asking about marketing. If we were going to do a Super Bowl commercial, that's, I don't know that that's something that's in the realm of possibility or even beneficial for us to do at this particular point. But it does bring up a point of when we're going to start doing television commercials. We have, I think, 6 or 7 videos that we've done already. Those were kind of, our efforts into working up to a higher level video. We will be working on that. But that's not slated for this year. Just get that out of your mind. Next year, we are looking at doing a commercial that would be featured on maybe some streaming services as well as television. So that's another thing that we have had those discussions. They would be in certain markets initially that we have identified for the targeted demographic for some of those products. So hopefully that answers your question. Next one was shareholders letter release date. So I addressed this in the last video. I've got to get past a few things because the shareholder letter has quite a bit of material in there and references things that have not yet happened in certain areas. I won't get into the specifics, but that's what the shareholders letter is for. So we've held that back. Expect to see that out in the next calendar. I have it up, but it's fluid right now. But that letter is scheduled to come out August, the beginning of August. Now, that might change. I might go a little sooner because we're working on kind of expediting a certain timeline on a few things, which many people have been asking about, making assumptions on acquisitions and so forth. I've made no secret that we are reviewing other companies, so we are currently taking a look at the potential of executing on another one by the end of the year. So that would answer that question. Well, within the next couple of months, obviously before the end of the year. The shareholder letter will be out in August. Okay. So S1 capital raise. Great question. How much do we intend to raise? So we do have a number. It's more, when you look at the investment banks and the partners that the banking partners that we currently are aligned with, the raise will be twofold. So this isn't a round A and B. I know that's where everybody goes to. So I don't want to get into the numbers yet. We will probably get into those numbers in the next couple of weeks. I need to get past the audits. So once we get past the audits, the S1 will be filed, and that will be filed to raise a certain dollar figure that we need to, or that we estimate that will be needed for expansion in several different areas. Now there is another group that will help us with some of the other capital raise, and they're going to be very similar in numbers. So they're large blocks, but they are needed to not just expand the footprint of UAT Group, but also the subsidiaries. So, and we'll support some of the efforts like that we discussed earlier as far as hiring and everything else. So that dictates quite a bit, right? and we have to put some other infrastructure in. It speaks to some of the other things we discussed about acquisition of buildings and so forth to house some of the things I'd like to relocate here in Florida. H2O being one of them. They're going to be relocating, or I should say, their manufacturing will be relocated to Florida, so that we can work on some of the demonstrations that need to take place along the eastern seaboard, as well as even part of the central United States. And then we'll work on a few other things for the West Coast. But in the meantime, we're working on relocating them to Florida, as well as some of the operations or manufacturing for Ossifix, NextCast, which is a strategic partner, and Vector Scientific. So the hub for a lot of the manufacturing, or most of the manufacturing, is targeted to be here in Florida. And then we'll have fulfillment and so forth for the southeastern portion of the United States. And we have something else that we'll be working on in Texas for fulfillment. And I think that's it. We've got a few things we're working on, but I will speak with you again on Friday for our update. Hopefully this answered everybody's questions. And I look forward to the next round. These are really great questions, I have to say. Thank you. So look forward to talking to you on Friday.